Seahawks and Price for Wednesday, March 12, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic Wall Center. And as always, this show a presentation of Bet365. Matt Seahawks alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. Big show coming up in advance of, we talked about this yesterday. It's been years since the Canucks have played a regular season game this big.
Mm-hmm.
There have been games in the past chasing a playoff spot where you go, boy, if they get this one, they're right in the thick of things. But as we discussed yesterday about last year, they were so far and clear of the playoffs that you didn't have this sort of gravitas. You didn't have these meaty, weighty March regular season games. Well, here we are.
Dave Pratt is upset that this didn't happen 3 months ago.
Honestly, we should send
but
royalties.
This is a must-win.
We should send royalties to Big Daddy because the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question is tonight's game versus Calgary a must-win for the Vancouver Canucks. Yes or no? Voting at the Seahawks and Price X and YouTube channels. Blake Price, you say what?
Well, again, if this was Pratt, it would have been November 12th when this poll question would have come out.
We did consider it. I do believe we had a chat there when they were struggling.
This year or last, for sure, we thought about doing an early one.
Oh, it wasn't last. It was this.
I said in these two sets of back-to-backs, they needed to go 3-1. So, ergo, they've gotten rid of the one. They must, therefore, go 3-0 the rest of the way. Well, this one against the direct competitor, though. This one, the team you're chasing.
Right,
you can win a lot of games, but if your competitor wins too,
exactly.
This
is the 4-point game.
Yeah.
Canucks 1 point back of the Flames, having played an additional game. So you lose this one in regulation, you're 3 back, and Calgary has a game in hand, chance to go 5 up.
No, you steal back the spot, and you force them to win their game in hand if you win. So it's a big one.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Fact of the matter, I voted no just because there's 18 games left. So not really, but it certainly has the feel of a must-win. That much
Well, the snowball starts rolling downhill pretty fast, too. The Canucks have avoided regulation 3-game losing streaks pretty well this season. This would be a bad time to start.
Yes. It would be a very bad time to start. So you voted yes or no?
It's a must-win. Yeah, I'm voting yes.
All right. There you go, Dave. You taught him well. Well, daily poll question, presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go there today, you get yourself $500 off a new or used vehicle, and that is because EP40 got on the score sheet.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Everybody at the dealership around town trying to cheer the hometown hero back to the top. So get there today, $500 off a new or used vehicle. Of course, if he scores 2 points, you get $1,000 off until the next game day. 5 points, $2,500 off. You got to mention Seahawks and Price. That part is key. These offers are valid until the next game day. Time to cheer AP40 back to the top. Score more, save more, more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit 13820 104th Avenue.
I'll correct myself or get more accurate, if you will. The Canucks have had 3 losing streaks of 3 games or more this season, but none of them have included 3 straight regulation losses.
No, this would be the first 3 straight regulation loss of the season.
Yep.
Which brings us to our top story. Double trouble, biggest regular season game in years, coming off this disappointing loss to Montreal at home. Lose tonight in Calgary, and the playoff chances take a huge hit. Here's Money Puck. The Canucks lose in regulation to the Flames. Their playoff odds go down 8.3% to just 16.1%. A regulation win pushes those odds up 9.3% to still just a 1-3, 33.6%. It's starting to get away from them.
Well, I mean, Calgary, after that win would be around the same, though, right? So it puts them neck and neck because they have to factor in the possibility of the odds due to
The
Blues
St.
and
Louis
Utah.
is the
And all.
Utahs, yeah.
So in that sense, I think you still feel pretty good about your chances. But they have to nip this in the bud. I mean, 3-6. You think about the optimism going into that Four Nations face-off, Matt. 6-1-1, 6-1-1, 6-1-1. 3-6 coming out of it. That 3-6 record, 6 points in 9 games, that matches their worst 9-game stretch at any point this season. So not only did the Canucks not carry the momentum of the pre-Four Nations schedule through the break and out, they are now as bad as they have been all season long.
Many said the break came at the worst possible time for the Canucks, and that's proven true.
Yeah.
Last year, everything went right. This year, everything going wrong. Quinn Hughes traveled with the team. Rick Tocchet hinted strongly last night that he'll play. He's missed 4 straight and 10 of the last 13. TSN in Calgary observed this morning. Farhan reports via his colleague, Salim Valji, skated for 25 to 30 minutes, moved with pace, plenty of twisting, shooting, practicing breakouts, looked like someone preparing to play tonight. He'll play. You know he'll play.
So the question
Biggest game of
is,
the year, he's got to play.
who's forcing
75, 80%? I don't care what he is, he's got to play.
Who's forcing the issue here?
Oh, there's a possibility that no issue is forced.
Well, if no issue is forced, what's the difference of the 24 hours, I would guess?
24 additional hours. 4-point game as opposed to 2-point game.
Yeah, I think I bet you there's one side of this has got gas on it, one side of it's got brakes on it. I don't know which is which.
You're almost at an all gas, no brakes part of the year, though. Effectively, you're in the postseason right now, and the coach's coaching is such. Philip Hronek logs a season-high 27 minutes and 51 seconds in a regulation game. You're playing 28 minutes in a regulation game.
I don't know that those numbers are going to go down because Quinn Hughes comes in. He's just going to have Quinn Hughes beside him.
I would expect the same tonight.
Yeah.
He'll play big minutes. Hronek got a goal and assist. I know he caught some heat about not anchoring his own pair and hasn't stepped up in Quinn Hughes' absence. I felt he's been very good.
Well, he's been okay, yeah.
More than okay. I think Philip Hronek has been.
Well, the defense is never like spectacular, but his offense at least has come back, and that's been a part of his reason for being paid what he is. So,
well, yeah,
he does need
rightfully
to contribute.
So. Tocchet was asked about the big game in Calgary last night following the loss to Montreal. Here's what he had to say.
Quick turnaround. No excuses, even though it's a back-to-back. When they came in here, we had a back. We beat them, but they were a tired team. But we can't have that excuse. We had. I think I rolled the 4 lines. I don't think anybody was taxing tonight, so I think we should be okay.
Yeah, he did roll the 4 lines last night. He leaned heavily on Hronek, but you look at the forward ice time, none of them cracked 20 minutes. Elias Pettersson at 19 minutes and 48 seconds. There's nobody who's got less than 10-26, and that was Drew O'Connor, who, of course, was suffering from the flu. So he took a little bit of a longer-term, bigger picture view in terms of the way he was deploying ice time, particularly down 3-0 last night to Montreal. Tonight you get a matchup of the 2 lowest scoring teams since Christmas, Blake. Okay, get excited.
I might watch this one on a tilt. Like you join the game an hour late, and that way you've got that 30-second jump button at your disposal for when you need it.
I teased our old friend John Abbott, who will have the call tonight. It's a national game, so John Abbott, Kelly Rudy on the call from Calgary. I teased John with the cliched, SportsCenter hit. Should be a good one. Vancouver averaging 2.20 goals per game since Christmas. Calgary second worst in the league at 2.38.
That 3.8 means that every 3 games they've got one more goal in their back pocket. Than the Vancouver Canucks do.
Let me ask you this. Was Kevin Lankinen the wrong call last night?
No.
Why not?
You got to win every game. Like you have to right now. They ain't got time to bleed, and Sheelovs has been bleeding 80% of the time he's playing.
Are they disadvantaged tonight?
Yes.
Because
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Should they have pulled Lankinen at 3 buzz or even just for the third period?
Nope. I think they'll look back on that game and say,
you were sitting there texting me and Corrado, there's no way their Canucks are coming back at 3 buzz, and you're telling me you wouldn't have pulled the goalie then at that point if that's how you felt?
No, I'm never a big fan of that. I don't think if you bring in a rusty, unwarmed up RD Sheelovs and they get 3 more, I don't think that helps you going into this game. And I think they'll tell you, hey, look what happened. We almost came back and won that game. So they'll say that they came that close to getting points out of that after that early deficit. I don't think he was great.
Elias was saying in a post, it almost doesn't matter. We're not counting almost. Moral victory. They lose 4-2. They stake the Habs to a 3-0 lead. 2 goals in the third make it a 1-goal game, but they surrender the empty netter. They have been particularly awful 6-on-5 this year, huh?
Well,
just zone entries have been such an issue. Puck possession have been such an issue.
JT Miller was the straw that stirred the drink at 6-on-5. JT Miller was Mr. 6-on-5.
Mr. 6-on-5.
Man, that guy excelled.
Yeah.
So you take him out of it. I mean,
his team, he did really well when his team had its finger on the scale.
Totally. The overwhelming feeling I have when watching last night's game is this is just not a team that has a lot of skill, or they are not being allowed to use them. So, one of those two things is true.
Well, so I was going to get into this with you. That was a good offensive game for them, despite just scoring 2 goals.
Well,
natural stat trick
by
through
stats.
2 periods, had their expected goals for at 2.74. That is top 5 all season through 40 minutes for a Canucks regular season game at even strength.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem was the first period. You give up 2 goals, no shots for Petey, Besser, and DeBrusk. It got better in the second period. Where do I have it?
High dangers were even. Scoring chances 12-8. Mm-hmm. Shots 10-7 for the
They
Canucks.
get booed off the ice after the first. It gets better in the second. And then you look at the end game, and that's 3 of 4 of the last 4 where Elias Pettersson has been very good. Elias Pettersson was not the issue last night. Power play goal, chances 25-2 when he's on the ice. High dangers 8-1, shots 12-1. 93% expected goals. He won 13 of 19 draws. Alas, he's -2 because he's on the ice for the Caulfield goal to start and the empty netter late. And here is something that a lot of Canucks fans are taking umbrage with. I want to play the clip of Rick Tocchet talking about that Montreal top line of Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slavkovsky, who scored 3 goals on the evening. Here's Coach.
We didn't have an answer for their top line there with the 3 goals, and that's a good line. They make plays. So we had a tough, that's a tough. We just have an answer. If we first goal, obviously we were give the puck away. We were on the wrong spots against those guys. Anyways, we did make a comeback. Had some goal mouth scrambles. We had, the guys tried. I got to give them a lot of credit.
What many are saying is you did have an answer, Coach. Elias Pettersson's line, and you chose to go away from that matchup at home because of the early goal from Caulfield. Okay, be upset about it, sure. Mm-hmm. But don't get away from the hard match. Kiefer Sherwood got absolutely caved last night when playing that line. And then there's this. And from Thomas Drance after the first period. Okay, so you get 2 goals from your top line if you're Montreal, and they're scored against the Canucks top 6. Drance, in 8.3 games, so 8 games in last night's first period, since the Four Nations, Vancouver outscored 14-2 5-on-5 with Elias Pettersson or Philip Heatle on the ice. That's totally imbalanced, and yet saw this from the Hamalytics account, and I do like this account. The Canucks, and particularly Pettersson and Heatle, are getting PDO'd right now. 337 forwards have played at least 75 even-strength minutes since the Four Nations. Pettersson ranks 331 in PDO, 878. Heatle ranks 330, 879. Besser, DeBrusk are also in the bottom 15. So occasionally you need a save, and occasionally it's the other goaltender making a big save.
I would argue, though, first of all, let's go to the prowess of Pettersson last night. This is where eye test and analytics need to be used in tandem, because while the Corsi is high for Elias Pettersson last night, and the shot
Besser,
I would very much argue with any sort of high danger stats that they have on Natural Stat Trick last night. To me, that was a ton of perimeter work, a ton of work from the point. And anytime you did see anything from in tight, it was just Messi jamming the puck at the goaltender. Like, I didn't see any high skill at work here. And to me, that's the biggest problem with the Vancouver Canucks. And again, whether that's from the coach or that's from the player, only they know. But I am not seeing anything from this team right now that suggests when you're in a bind, when you don't see any path to offense, I'm going to create it from any one player. Agree. And even a team like the Montreal Canadiens, which boast no superstars, we saw that. Like the Suzuki goal is spectacular. Mm-hmm. Fighting that off. Slavkovsky power move down the wing. Amazing. We are not seeing that from this team right now. They either do not have the horses, or the horses are being asked to play in a way that is not allowing them to run. And it's just a fruitless endeavor to watch a Canucks game right now and, well, A, expect to be entertained, but B, expect salvation from this team. Like, well, it all just feels like you're filtering back to the point. Maybe a shot gets through. Maybe there'll be a loose puck. You can jam it in. That's the offense of the Vancouver Canucks.
That's the offense without Quinn Hughes.
Right. So the question is, what does he provide
here
tonight?
Dramatically with Quinn Hughes, because half the game or thereabouts, you have an offensive creator.
With the real Quinn Hughes. So what we saw when he played those couple of games a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, the worst 2 games maybe of Quinn Hughes' Canucks career. Mm-hmm. So what Quinn Hughes are we getting? If he's healthy, yeah, you're right. Things can change.
Yeah.
If it's that guy that kind of forced it and limped into those lineups, I don't think it's going to change much.
Well, it's will be his first game since the first of the month, if I'm not mistaken. And so he's had 11 days here. One would suspect he's fresher. Can't imagine the injury got worse in those 11 days.
No, probably not worse, but how much better?
About the Sunday game, the second of a back-to-back, because that'll be taxing.
And that's the more important 4-point matchup,
the Utah game after the Chicago game. And, as we said earlier, Tocchet ain't got time to bleed here. He's now got to lean on his best players and a bit more of a playoff-style deployment. Mm-hmm. Particularly of his 2 best defensemen. And if anybody separates themselves up front, I would suspect there's ice time to be gained there. Philip Heatle looks great tonight. He might play 23 minutes. Same with Elias. Same with DeBrusk.
And back to your 14-2 stat that Thomas dug out, like, that talks a little bit about those forwards' ability to help defend. But, hey, that's Elias Pettersson. It's the guy that we used to attribute to a Selke. And this is supposed to be an improved defensive team. Like, the one concession a lot of people are giving to the Canucks, they can't score, but they are much improved defensively. Are they? Like lately, I've seen a lot of cracks in that. Like the shot suppression has been there in fits and starts for sure. We saw that one stretch of games where nobody was getting above 25 for like a week and a half. But the goals are starting to go in on this team now. So I'm not sure I'm buying that anymore even. The Canucks have surrendered at least 4 goals now. In 4 of the last 6, they've at least surrendered 3 goals in all 6 of those games. That's not a defensive team.
Well, and the other thing is, without Demko now, you're so reliant on Lankinen, right?
Yeah.
And this is the great beyond for Kevin Lankinen. He's not accustomed to playing this often and having the workload that he's had to date at this stage of the season with 18 to go. So, you're coming back with Lankinen tonight, and at least we think that. But I do wonder about the decision yesterday. And normally I'm with you, ain't got time to bleed, but you got 2 back-to-backs coming up, and you got a crucible game here in Calgary tonight.
I think Sheloff's plays versus Chicago.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
That's his one win this year, and pretty anemic offense there too. So I'm guessing he plays versus Chicago.
Win or lose tonight, you think he plays against?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think they have to.
Look, and the Canucks catch a bad break here. Did Dakota Joshua's goal go in?
May have. Yeah.
I found myself agreeing with Ray on the broadcast that it must have gone in, and yet there was no conclusive evidence. I think that's also fair, and thus the call of no goal on the ice stands. I think they got it right.
Here's a question I haven't had. I think I know the answer, but you tell me. So there's the puck.
It's the angle.
The puck spins at one point where it's actually perpendicular to the line. Mm-hmm. I don't think any part of the puck is touching the line anymore. I think the part that is touching the ice is behind, but I think if you do the NFL rule of to the sky, it probably clips the curve of the puck. Does that mean it's a goal or not a goal?
I don't know.
I think it means it's not a goal.
You thought it broke the plane.
Well, I think what's touching broke the plane, but not what's in the air. I think the curve of the puck.
Yeah. And I'm not sure you're ever going to get to a world where that is.
Well, unless it's fully microchipped and it knows how big it is and where it is.
Well, and it is a good question.
Yeah.
Could you not use that Cyclops technology on the goal line? Is there a better way to do it than the angles that we currently have?
Well, they've got so much tracking in that puck now. Mm-hmm. Surely we can get to this point.
Yeah, I think we're going to get there, but it wasn't last night. And I'm going to say this again. I said this once earlier in the year, and I'm sure if I comb through every minute of Rink Wide with Jeff Pettersson and company, you will hear talk about the officials this year. Of course, you do. They're part of the game, part of the tapestry. They come into play. But Blake, I can't remember a Canucks season where there have been so few officiating controversies.
Yeah, I think so.
Like on any given night, you can go on a Twitter timeline and hear people griping about the officials. But when I sit here, because we take on the big officiating,
the league-wide stuff.
Well, no, or the big ones off a Canucks scheme. We don't nickel dime very often.
Was that a trip?
Was that a trip? I have no interest in having those conversations. We get to the playoffs a little bit different. Everything's more pronounced. Microscope.
I'll say that
that's when I'm okay with delving a little deeper into that. But damn it, these officials have done a very good job this year in arbitrating Canucks.
Well, league-wide controversies are down too, Matt. Massive. That's a terrible call. That cost them.
Exactly.
I have not seen that headline a lot.
No, I got to give them their due. And of course, they do a fantastic job more often than not. A large percentage of the time, the officials do a very, very good job.
Does it seem like penalties are down?
This year, I got to say, I watch these games, and I am not often sitting there going, what are you talking about? Or, oh, that's a soft call, or how did they miss that?
But do you think penalties are down? I haven't looked at it. I'm sure we can.
Scoring's down, but I haven't seen if penalties are down.
But back in the day, it was a guarantee both teams had at least 5 power plays a game. And
I read
that's extravagant now.
I forget what team it was last night, but I read something along that had the most shorthanded situations of their season last night, and it was 6.
Yeah, that wasn't crazy back in the day. Your team would go 1 for 6, 2 for 6 regularly.
Well, you did all those post games for years.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
4 was a light night. Now we see regularly a 2 power play night for the Canucks.
I would love to believe that is just a more skilled group of NHL players writ large that don't have to rely on hooking, holding, and playing outside of the rules. I would like to think that they're just got more aptitude. They have better control over their stick, over their body. They've gotten some of the bad habits out of the game. When you take that hand off the stick and you grab, you know that's going to be called, right?
Yeah.
The cross check to the back of the neck with somebody in the slot, they're going to be looking for that. They'll be calling that. So I'd like to think that.
For the past 9 seasons, power plays have averaged 2.9 to 3.1 per game per team.
2.9 to 3.1?
That seems very low compared to what we grew up with.
So then you're getting 6 total.
Yeah, 6 total.
Yeah. But we've talked about it. The granite block defenseman who can't skate and has no hands, he doesn't play in the NHL anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody in the NHL now skates at a certain level, can handle the puck at a certain level. In fact, the penalty we might see the most is puck over glass, and I love that rule. I know some people hate it, but have the skill level to keep the puck within the confines of the playing surface. Do not create necessary. That's the one that you see more often than not when guys just get a little loose. Guys get a little careless. But I'm not sitting there and even as I watch the game, I'm not sitting there on a night-to-night basis going, oh, that's a hook, that's a hold, that's interference and impeding. No.
Okay, so
I think the NHL player has adapted.
The 80s saw it upwards at 5 per game per team.
Per team. So that's 10. So that's like 4 more power plays over the course of a game.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
In the 90s, it crept down to 4. It was in the 4s all the way to 2009.
Okay.
It dropped below 4s in 2009, has not seen it since, and now it's below 3s at times.
Yeah. Okay, good. What are our friends at Yellow Dog Neighborhood Foolish up to?
I have some new information about there because on International Women's Day just a couple days ago, I believe, Neighborhood Brewing released Glow Up Hazy IPA with hibiscus, a collaboration with Pink Boots Society. It's a bold, juicy, vibrant brew with notes of citrus, stone fruit, tropical fruit. The draft-only release is available at Neighborhood and select locations. Go check it out if you're in the neighborhood of the Okanagan, or maybe call ahead to Port Moody and Yellow Dog. Maybe they'll have it there too.
Brock Besser speaking yesterday before the game and acknowledges, because Coach Tocchet mentioned this a few days ago, that he really misses JT Miller. Brock, quote, when you play with a guy for 2 years and a guy to that degree of how good he is and how good of a passer he is and how he creates space, it's definitely an adjustment. I feel like I'm trying to understand that it's going to be different, and I've got to play a little different with other guys. I think I can definitely shoot the puck more and get around the net. I think I've got to get to the net front and find those greasy rebounds, and I think he's right. Coach was also talking, he's a great tipper of the puck. You saw that one sequence last night where he gets a terrific tip on the puck. Canadiens goalie's just in the right spot. I liked everything that Brock said about this, except for I feel like I'm trying to understand that it's going to be different. Son, it's been different for the last month.
Yeah.
You ain't got more time to try and understand this. This is your reality, Brock. And it really sucks. And it really sucks for you. And it really sucks for the Vancouver Canucks. And it may even suck for your potential market this summer. But yeah, you're not going to be able to play the same way that you played with JT Miller, even if Elias is your centerman, which he has been.
Well, JT would suck defenders in, and
That's
usually 2 of them. And that opened up space for Brock Besser.
And was a great distributor when he did that.
Yeah, amongst the best passers in the last 5 years in the National Hockey League.
JT is a complete offensive player. He's a playmaker. He's a shooter. He had a big shot. He had an accurate shot. He had vision. He understood, especially in the half court. He understood where the pieces were going, where he needed to go, and he understood angles, either angles to shoot or angles to distribute.
And I don't know if it's actually happening or if it's just the fact that all this has created the appearance of it or if he is just not moving his feet. But Brock looks slower today than he did 3 months ago.
He looks like he did a couple of years ago when they were trying to trade him with no success.
Yeah.
And I understand that he's close to his teammates, and we asked the question yesterday about appropriate respect. Has he been shown that by the Canucks? I understand that he's very close to his teammates. I understand that this year has been particularly hard for him, watching this Elias-JT feud effectively affect the team and, of course, lead to a different team composition since the trade of Miller. But we're at a point now where he's got to show positive agency, much like what Tocchet was saying about Pettersson last week. You know, okay, the first 60 games were shitty. You've got 22 left. Mm-hmm. Make the most of them. Can't do anything about the past. Nothing. It's got to be proactive, positive agency for what's left. You've got runway left here. These are really big games. You were terrific in the playoffs last year, Brock. You were pretty darn good in your first run in the playoffs as well. These are postseason games. Treat them as such. Got to bring the fire, passion, intensity, the A-est of A game you can muster here, despite the difficult circumstances. And this has sort of been my problem with the Canucks all season, and particularly when Hughes is out of the lineup, is it's almost like it's a built-in excuse. And I don't know if the way that management messaged the Miller-Pettersson feud and everything almost like took them off the hook, made them feel as though, look who's in the lobby level here. It's Craig J. Button.
J. Button is here.
TSN. He's blowing kisses. Thank you, Craig. Right back at you. But, you know, nobody has sort of risen to the occasion and said, I've got this. Nobody has realized, okay, we're missing a really key part of our team. I've got to do more. I've got to be the I got to be the guy who's scruffing the neck. Come with me.
Well, I'm at about 82% that he's not going to be re-signed by the Vancouver Canucks, Brock Besser. And with every passing game that he looks like he has, it's going up by 1%.
I think so. Some other news we have to get to with the Vancouver Canucks, and particularly for those accustomed to going to Rogers Arena 12 times a year. Mm-hmm. The Canucks have canceled quarter-season ticket packages. So going forward, you can only buy the full or the half-season packs. Now, given the economy, the cost of living here, and, of course, what might still be to come during Tariff War, is this going to push people out? Is this a wise business decision from Canucks Sports and Entertainment?
Last I checked, the economy's not exactly booming.
No.
And now you're taking away the possibility of people, like, I would think the opposite would be true right now, that you would find creative ways for people to be able to afford. And they're doing the opposite.
Yeah. Are they getting too big for their britches on ticket prices and ticket packs, given performance of this club, especially on home ice? Another home ice loss last night. Given the now strong possibility they could miss the playoffs, given low event Rick Tocchet hockey, and a potential retool for next year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The only thing I will say, and I say this every time this comes up, and some of you yell at me, and I understand that. I understand why, at least. I think Canucks hockey is a little bit insulated against economic climate and all these other factors because of the number of wealthy people we have in this community who are just going to buck up. We saw this during the decade of despair, where it was grotesque, unwatchable hockey. And yes, the building wasn't as full. There was empty seats. And yes, you couldn't give away the Tuesday night Columbus game. And there are some people who are so stinking rich that they did not give a single solitary F about that.
And maybe they've done the math that hey, even if we're only at 17.9 for a couple of games, we're selling these tickets at such a freight now that we're still doing better than if we'd kept tickets at the same price and it was full.
Yep.
So maybe they've done that math.
It is entirely possible. And look, pro sports and NHL hockey in particular are moving towards a direction where they are only for the wealthy or those who have a lot of disposable income. And the Vancouver Canucks, they have consistently shown their colors here, and their colors are mostly green. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by our friends at Greta Bar. I have very exciting news coming up, and that is we will shortly be able to tell you about the next Canucks Army viewing party at Greta. It's a fantastic spot to catch all the games home and away. Be listening for details of that viewing party. Steps from the arena and stadium, pregame, postgame. Check it all out. The Smash Burger is a particular favorite from the street food menu. The air hockey table is incredible. The arcade that encircles the bar. Weekly drink specials. Greta, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. We have, is it Corrado then? Boy, I've been bad on this week.
Yes.
It's Corrado then Gilman. Corrado, the glorious return of Laurence Gilman. He was away on holiday for the last couple of weeks. Frank Corrado also going to join us. Frankie breaking down the dump and chase and Rick Tocchet style of hockey off the top. Frank was on the TSN panel for the Habs regional broadcast last night. So he sat there and watched the game and analyzed it during the intermissions, and he brings some of that to the interview today as we talk about Tocchet's style and
I watched
successful they were at dump and chase, chip and chase last night.
I watched their broadcast last night, and after 2 periods, they actually went to an additional little panel. Arpon Basu from The Athletic and the play-by-play guy, Brian Mudryk, had a chat. And both of them were stunned at the effort by the Vancouver Canucks up to that point, through the 40 minutes. They thought they said both of these teams are on the playoff bubble and only one is playing in the game tonight.
Fair. That's fair.
So that was the reaction by the visitors.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on deadline with Laurence Gilman, needless to say, given his expertise of being in those war rooms, negotiating contracts. So fantastic conversation there. And look, Whitecaps, Lions, Seahawks, baseball. It's getting really busy. This is a fantastic time.
I love today's show, by the way. We've got the on-ice sort of review of what's happening. We got the off-ice review of where the Canucks are going. It's a fun show today.
Yep. And this guy's kicking ass and taking names when it comes to his
predictions.
Safeway, my NHL picks. Boy, if he keeps this up, might not need this show anymore. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. I had Lekramaki to score last night. He did not score. Did he even come close? I don't think he even came close.
Not much from him.
No. I was a little disappointed there. I thought it was the type of game. You got a lot of young guys on the other team as well. Okay, no, not so much. So go ahead. I know you're on the Caps tonight, but you tell me what you got today.
By the way, Lekramaki, 3 important games for him, right? Because they're not exactly murderers. Well, 4. All these 4 games we're talking about, these aren't murderers row here. They're not playing the NHL's elite. You'd like Lekramaki to be able to show well in one of these 4 games, if not a couple. I'm just going straight money line here. We've talked about the importance of this game for the Vancouver Canucks here tonight. Must-win territory, if not must-win. And you're getting underdog money here, as you would expect, on home ice for Calgary. Plus 130. Canucks, you got to do it.
2 lowest scoring teams since Christmas, but dense in that Vancouver defensive structure that we talked about. Most likely a tired Lankinen. Quinn Hughes coming back. I think there's a chance for Calgary to score some goals tonight. I think there's a chance for the Canucks to do better offensively with Quinn than they have been.
And it's the low number.
And an empty netter that gets you to 6, as we saw last night.
Yep.
So I'm going a counterintuitive over 5.5 goals, paying even money. Breaking news from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner, every face-off hat trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, and every suspenseful minute in between. Amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app today and use code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Frank Corrado coming up next. Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center.
This segment brought to you by your Toyota Pacific dealers who are in a giving mood. And around the Canucks as well. They'd love to send you in style to the Kanika Minolta President's Club. You know, you've been looking down at that section going, well, I wonder what it's like. Find out what it's like. April, I was going to say June. No, they're not playing in June, I don't think.
Hey,
April 6th.
Let's April before we June.
April 6th, Golden Knights and the Vancouver Canucks. Go sit in the fancy section. All you have to do is check out the link in our episode description, or you can follow Toyota Pacific on Instagram and Facebook at Toyota Pacific for your chance to enter. Contest open to residents of BC and the Yukon. Have to be age of majority. And while you're poking around the website, shoptoyota.ca, maybe look at the BZ4X, their brand new electric installation of the electric lineup in Toyota. They've had an electric lineup for years, so you can trust the Toyota brand like you can trust the gassers as well. Lots of rebates and incentives. You can finance it from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Shoptoyota.ca, or go just take one for a ride.
Absolutely. Our next guest is a former Vancouver Canuck, a TSN hockey analyst, and the subject of a fawning feature story this week in the province. Let's welcome back to the show, Mr. Frank Corrado.
Boys, who out-dumpins the Vancouver Canucks?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Outdumps them. Nobody outdumps the Canucks.
They go, some teams go goal for goal. Some teams go hit for hit, shot for shot. Good luck going dump in for dump in with the Vancouver Canucks this year.
Also leading the league in jam-in attempts. In non-skilled shot, just jam the pads of the goalie.
Yeah,
league
there was
leaders.
a lot of jamming happening last night. Lots of jam jobs.
Yeah. Good soft dumps in the corner like a toddler.
I don't know that they're even that good at it, to be honest.
This is, since he doesn't want to talk about Steve Ewan's feature story about him, and by the way, it was very agreed with every word, and you threw us some lovely.
Thank you
compliments.
to Steve. That was very nice.
It was, and Steve is one of the great people in our industry, so I was pleased to see that. No, since you want to talk dump-ins, and I've noticed this on the last few Canucks games, or several recent Canucks games. I don't have all the stats for you, but zone entries last night at even strength. 28 uncontrolled attempts, so that's a lot of dump-ins there. 3 successful. 41 controlled attempts, 35 successful.
Looks like I should carry it in.
You would know better than me, Frank, but like, what percentage of dump-ins are you hoping to recover for possession? And when you are 35 and 6 on your controlled entries and 3 and 25 in your uncontrolled entries,
That's pretty damning.
Should that tell you something?
Yes, yeah. I would say, like, if you're dumping the puck in, it's got to be more than 50-50. as far as getting it back. Like,
that's baseline. 50-50 is baseline. I think,
thanks,
right?
Captain Obvious. Yeah, like you got to be putting it to somewhere where you actually have a chance to get it back, or else why are you doing it? Like, I would say 70%, 65 to 70% is probably like a realistic good target. But yeah, like it's just a lot of dump it in. It's a lot of, let's try and chase it down. It's there's not a lot of creativity to it right now. And Montreal's first line, like if you had never watched a game of Montreal all season long and you watch those guys play, you're like, okay, Nick Suzuki's a good player, but you don't think of him in, the grand scheme of superstars in the NHL. No. Cole Caulfield's a very good goal scorer, but you probably think of 8, 9, maybe 10 goal scorers.
Didn't make the U.S. team. Like, I mean,
right, like the pure
they're
snipers.
both good young ascending players, but they're not quite at that level yet.
And then Juraj Slafkovsky always gets heat for being the first overall pick that shouldn't have been, right? Oh, he was a victim of the year, and Montreal got stuck with him, and he had a monster of a game last night. So I guess you put that all together, and that first line made plays that aren't just like standard stock plays. They obviously executed, they scored, and Vancouver had no answer for those guys. And that's not McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman. That's not, on paper, Matthews, Marner, Nyes. It's a very good line that had their way with the Canucks last night.
So I want to, believe it or not, ask a second question about dump-ins. This must be the peak dump-in content of our show of all time. But the Tocchet system prioritized possession in the offensive zone. We've talked about this many times. He preferred them to hang onto the puck in the offensive zone to look for a high-quality scoring chance rather than just shoot it at the net, the Brind'Amour style, if you will. In part because it was helpful defensively. Every second that you have the puck, the opposition doesn't. How would that logic not extend to controlled entries and carrying the puck in?
I don't know why you wouldn't want to carry it in. Like
you
just would.
It's the scoring instrument. You don't score without the puck. So why voluntarily surrender it as much as the Vancouver Canucks do? And can that system work at the highest levels of the NHL?
We could talk about the Tocchet system and, how it doesn't necessarily lend to offense as easily as you would like. But regardless of PDO and things that went in last year that weren't going in this year, last year looks different than this year. Like last year, they still made plays within the confines of what they were trying to do. And they aspired to do more that was sustainable last year. They wanted to be better off the rush. They're worse off the rush. Like there's a level of execution that they just haven't hit this year. And like as much as the system isn't necessarily conducive to it as some other ones may be, like Colorado, you also have to have the ponies and you also have to have the guys that can make the plays. And they don't have that. They have guys that dump the puck in, try and go get it. I also wonder, just from like experience, hearing certain coaches talk about things, turnovers, right? Like so many coaches will harp on, we can't turn it over at the blue line. And if that's something that always comes up, well, guess what guys do when they get close to the blue line? They'll dump the puck in. And like, I can't believe we're still talking about dump-ins, but the dump-in is something that has to be like premeditated. Like it can't just be, oh, I ran out of options and now I just got to dump this in, because chances are you're just putting it to a defenseman or the goalie. It's like you get over the red line and it's got to be hard, ringed around so the goalie can't get it, and you got two players going on the other side. That was well thought out. With it,
also,
if it's a soft
or
chip
soft
and chase,
and in the corner.
that means you have speed through the middle and you're putting it in the corner. And someone like Dakota Joshua, similar to what Josh Anderson does for Montreal, is going to go and run someone and try and come out with that puck. But if it's just a last resort thing that you're doing because you're like, got no play, don't want to turn it over, you don't come up with them.
Yeah, not skilled enough to outmaneuver someone at the blue line. So keep it simple.
And then you're flat-footed as well. So you're right. If it's predetermined and you're crossing center ice going, I'm going to dump it in, you're going to be skating with momentum and speed versus I got nothing, you dump it in, you're flat-footed, you're not going to get to that puck. There's zero chance you're getting to the puck.
Well, and here's another thing from last night's game, right? So you talk about wanting to play in the offensive zone. That's great. Vancouver, at all strengths, had 7 minutes and 44 seconds of offensive possession time to Montreal's 4 minutes and 30 seconds. High danger scoring chances, with those times being what they were even, 16 to 16. Slot shots, Montreal had 15 slot shots in their 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Vancouver had 9 slot shots in their 7 minutes and 44 seconds. So you can have it all you want in the offensive zone, but if it doesn't get to the dangerous areas, you're just killing the clock, and it's empty. Like, it was empty calorie stuff for Vancouver, and you get 2 floaters from the point, and it's like, you're in the game, but like, that wasn't a sustainable course of action for them to be in games.
They only go to the point. Like, they exclusively go to the point, Frank. And it is driving me crazy why nobody tries to roll out of the corner, why nobody tries to take the puck to the net. And I realize maybe they just don't have the horses, but they're supposed to. One guy freaking left on the forward set, JT Miller, one guy. Why does it all of a sudden look like the bottom has dropped out of this team? That's, to me, what I see is a team completely devoid of top-end skill. You talked about that Montreal top line. That top line gets maligned for not being a true top line. A lot of people have accused the Montreal Canadiens of masquerading a top line that's a second line on a lot of other teams. Well, what does that mean for the Canucks top 6, for heaven's sakes? Like, those guys look like wizards.
Yeah, right. Like that is exact. You're exactly right. Right, like, no one's gonna sit here and say rank the best top lines in the NHL. That line's not coming up. But
no,
like, you watch those guys play, like, nifty, responsible in their own zone, flip passes to areas, like highlight reel goals. And Vancouver, like, when you contrast with what Vancouver was rolling out there, that's not even close. Like, there's not that level of creativity. There's not that level of skill right now, and it's hard. Like, they're playing at a deficit offensively because they're not doing that type of stuff.
In the third period, the Montreal Canadiens are putting on some pressure on the Canucks. Pettersson is helping out defensively in his own corner, and he stripped, I think, Caulfield of the puck and went between his legs.
I saw that.
Pettersson did.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, that's really fine and dandy back there, but where the hell is that sort of creativity and maneuvering in the offensive zone? Like, I love that you're showing those handles to get out of trouble in the defensive zone, but can you try something like that, please, offensively?
Well, going back to what we were just talking about with the system and the turnovers, like, coaches have to be able to live with a certain amount of turnovers. Like, you just do. Guys have to be able to make some plays, and they're not always going to be executed properly. You're playing against good defensive teams, good defensive structure. Like, you just can't do it 100% of the time. You do have to be able to stomach a little bit of that. It's when it becomes a habit and it's, really stifling you and it's leading to odd man rushes against, like, that's when you really clamp down on that stuff. But to try and completely eliminate turnovers, like, I think that's, I don't know exactly what they would be talking about, but when you see guys not making the plays, you're like, okay, well, there's an element of, like, I don't want to screw this up. Like, I fear turnovers, and you can't. Like, you have to be a little bit brash offensively.
So you say JT Miller, they subtracted one guy. I would argue that subtracting JT Miller was like subtracting 3 guys.
Well, apparently.
Because of the outsized effect he had on his wingers. Brock Besser was talking about this yesterday. As we know, Besser's not a speed demon. Besser's not a rough and tumble, go into the corner, take the puck away from someone with physicality. Besser requires a centerman getting him the puck in good areas. And JT was so good as a passer, but also as a finisher himself, that whatever two guys were playing beside him, oftentimes it was Besser, were made better players because of his presence. So I would argue that the JT Miller cascading effect on his line, and then, of course, making things easier for the opposition to match up against the Vancouver Canucks, has actually affected the forward group as an entirety since the deal. Is that fair, Frank, or am I overthinking this?
I think when it's the best version of JT Miller, yes. When it was the JT Miller that could play 15 minutes a night and wasn't producing at 5-on-5, like, you kind of pretty much are where you are now. Like, that's that's the reality of what Miller's year was like in Vancouver, where there were some really good moments. There were some moments where he blended in, and JT Miller's not a guy that can blend in. And now Brock Besser is blending in, and doesn't create that little extra bit of separation because he doesn't have a bulldozer of a centerman who can retrieve and create his separation and get him the puck in good spots. So yeah, like there is a domino effect of not having a guy like JT Miller when JT Miller is playing at his best. And hindsight is so easy with all these things, because you can go back and say we were expecting him to be the guy he was last year. It wasn't always like that this year.
Yeah, and you're right about hindsight, but I think this was predictable, Frank. Like, this was a team that was struggling to score goals and then traded out one of their better goal catalysts.
Yeah, but what was the better course of action?
Well,
realistic course
it was
of action.
Obviously, it was a big picture, long-term view. It was also this isn't working with him and Pettersson, and this is ultimately going to have to happen. So I do think they resigned themselves to some short-term pain on the offensive side of things with JT moving out JT. But I also think they felt like they could be better defensively, and that's where first period last night, and even as the game went on a little beyond the score effects, boy, they gave up a lot last night. Like it looked pretty easy for Montreal
to a non-acclaimed top line, as we talked about.
Well, and okay, so you give up one play that leads to a breakaway where, like, the puck is in the offensive zone. It's a good play by Slafkovsky, but it's just like a regular play where someone just kind of leans against the board, something gets blocked. It shouldn't go from that to a breakaway in 2 seconds. The other one, the Caulfield goal on the 2-on-1, that should never go from quick up to 2-on-1. Like, there's just, you're right, defensively, they are a better defensive team than that, or they should be anyways, because if you're not going to score, you better defend with some layers and make it difficult. But that was like one pass can't lead to a 2-on-1. I'm sorry. Like, that can't be happening.
By the way,
let's move on.
The giveaway leaders in the league, you're talking about how sometimes you just have to put up with a skilled player taking it to the house. Giveaway leaders in the league: Nathan McKinnon, Nikita Kucherov, David Pasternak, Philip Forsberg, Mitch Marner, Jack Hughes. I'll keep on going. Skill players.
Yeah, no, of course.
They're going to try some shit.
They have the most touches, and absolutely. No, it stands to...
Hey, let me ask you guys a question.
Reason. It's like starting goaltenders are going to have more losses because they're in the net more. Okay, ask your question.
Okay, what'd you think of Lane Hudson? Like, do you see... Like, you saw Quinn Hughes as a young kid, like... The guy's the real deal, is he not?
Yeah, it's there for sure. Yeah.
He's legit. He lasted to the end of the second round. Like,
yeah,
you see what Hughes does. How is it?
Well, the rookie seasons are almost identical.
Bias against that guy.
I know the rookie seasons are identical. He's going to blow past what Seider did when he won Rookie of the Year. Like every time Hudson reaches a new milestone, it's like he's passing Lidstrom or Chelios or Larry Murphy. It's remarkable.
That tracks.
For defensemen, that's unheard of in the second round.
But those were the sorts of names and company that Hughes was
exactly.
As he hit all
I
these
just think there's a lot of similarities between those two guys. Like Hughes is a little more explosive. But Hudson is so elusive and competes so hard for such a young, small guy.
Let's use that as a segue. What does Hughes do to the Canucks tonight, assuming he plays?
Is he playing? Have they announced that?
That's the assumption.
I hinted strongly at he is making the trip.
Well,
How much of a difference?
Well, when he's on the ice, they'll have some creativity, they'll have some speed, they'll have some playmaking that isn't just stock dump and chase or, I don't know, 3-on-3 rush type stuff. Like he's going to do stuff that isn't exactly in the box playbook, so it looks different and it becomes unpredictable for the opponent. When he's not on the ice, it'll look very similar to what you have seen the last little while. When it's stifled, and he's not the kind of guy that is going to jump in and play it safe or be conservative. Like, he's coming to play if he's going to play. And he's the kind of guy that completely changes the complexion of the game, and the Canucks desperately need to have that in the lineup right now.
What are they up against in Calgary? Also a team that doesn't score a lot, and a team that seemingly has been riding this extraordinary rookie season from goaltender Dustin Wolf.
You see, but Calgary actually defends pretty well. Like, as you know, they're not world beaters defensively, but they are pretty good defensively, and Dustin Wolf is a big part of that for sure. But they're pretty stingy for a team that wasn't supposed to be this good coming into the season, and like, they don't score either. So tonight it's a battle of like, who can get a lead? Can you get a 2-0 lead in this game? Because if you can lock it down, the other team is going to have a hard time doing something that is, unordinary offensively. So I think like the first goal is important, the next goal is important, and similar to last night, where Montreal is somewhat similar to these teams as well, where they have been guilty of giving up a lot. There have been times where they don't necessarily score as much, like they're scoring more now, but they got that 3-0 lead, and in that whole second period, you're like, it's pretty much over. Like, I don't know. Outside of the two floaters, it never felt overly. It never felt like Vancouver was overwhelming. It didn't feel like there was this massive push. It was just, you got 2 goals because the goalie didn't play great. Well, in Calgary, the goalie's going to play great. He just is. He's been like that all season long, and they're a pretty good team defensively. So playing with the lead tonight is going to be huge for whichever team is able to do it.
Yeah. We started talking about this week. We feel like it's the dead puck era. First goal is so meaningful.
Yeah, soccer on ice.
Yeah, some teams are playing that. Colorado ain't playing that. Colorado is not playing that. They are playing like run. Okay, I'm not going to call it run and gun, but high octane offensive hockey is what Colorado is playing. It's what Dallas is going to be playing. There's some teams that are playing dead puck hockey.
Yeah, well, when you got guys who can skate like McKinnon, HS, McCarr,
let them go.
Have you ever seen a player go to a team and fit in like perfectly, like Natchez has in Colorado? Yeah. It was like he was made to be on that team.
They're pretty smart guys there in Colorado. They hold the line on contracts, and they understand the profile of players they're looking for.
They didn't change much losing Rantanen, and he's a lot cheaper than Rantanen.
Well,
so
and
allows
so
him to do
like,
a lot of other things.
No one would argue that Rantanen's a better player than Natchez, but the fit for Natchez in Colorado makes it like you still get the same impact, and you get it for way cheaper. It's unbelievable. Like when it's all said and done, and the dust has settled on that was brilliant by Colorado.
Well, and there could be 2 winners there, too, because that's quite a haul that Carolina got as well. And look, I understand they may not be as strong in this postseason run, but they believe in taking, cracks year after year after year, and one day you'll knock the door down. So we'll see how they redeploy some of those assets and what becomes of the Hurricanes after this deal. Awesome stuff, Frank. Thank you for this. Once again, for those who missed the story from Steve Ewan in the province, check it out. And we'll catch up next week.
See you, boys.
Okay. You have some good soft dumps between now and then.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Seahawks and Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Resurrection Spirits, who have partnered up and created the Seahawks and Price Gin. It is made right here in East Vancouver using BC ingredients, triple distilled, 100% organic rye grain, and 5 timeless botanicals infused juniper, coriander, angelica root, lemon peel, and rose. A gin with character designed for those who appreciate the art of a true craftsmanship and in every pour. Use the code S&P, S, the and sign, ampersand, P, for $5 off at resurrectionspirits.ca and get yourself a bottle while supplies last. Limited edition run here. Yes, the S&P G&T from Resurrection Spirits.
Our next guest is a vodka guy, but maybe we can get him into some gin.
Well, he's a wine guy too, I thought, as well. I know he appreciates craftsmanship in every pour.
Once in Vegas, he gave me the full spiel on why he drinks vodka.
Oh, okay.
So ever since then, I've always...
Didn't realize you guys had a moment in Vegas. Laurence Gilman, former Canucks AGM, former NHL executive.
Lawrence gave me the hint that it's low calorie, but high taste. Tito's vodka was where we started, I think.
We can't have Tito's anymore, though.
No.
How you doing?
I'm good, except for Blake telling tales out of school.
Oh, good.
It's just booze. Come on.
Uh-huh.
So Karis,
his mother might.
That's amazing. That's impressive.
Yeah. His mother might be watching in Winnipeg.
Oh, yeah. I didn't
Call
know
him up. Lawrence, how much vodka are you drinking?
My brothers are watching for sure, and they know.
Oh, okay. First of all, welcome back. And I know you were away there for a couple of weeks, so great to have you back. Deadline, Lawrence. So, big picture, what did you make of what the Canucks did or didn't do?
Well, it's interesting. I as you alluded to, I wrote out the deadline on the shores of Punta Mita, Mexico, but I was in tune with what was going on. I know a lot was made about the relative inactivity of the Canucks over the actual deadline, but people need to keep in mind that they made a pretty significant deal or a series of deals within the month before the deadline. So, it was probably somewhat disappointing to the rank and file that there wasn't a bigger ad, as some other teams made big splashes on deadline day. I know it was the media across North America was very happy with how things went down. I obviously let's hit the elephant in the room. I witnessed what was said and written about Brock Besser. I didn't like the way Patrick Allvin characterized or devalued his player at his post-deadline press conference. That's something that clearly I think is going to, if it hasn't already, and I think it has already impacted the player's performance. I don't think it's going to mean spit in terms of the guy's market value if and when he gets to the market on July 1st. But it was certainly something that, judging by what I've seen in the games that the Canucks have played coming out of the deadline, something that I believe has affected this player and quite possibly has affected other players on his team.
And affects negotiations too, right? It can't help but not do that. It's going to affect any remaining negotiations between the player and the team.
Well, look, if what I hear and read is correct, there's a discord between the disconnect, if you will, between what the player thinks he's worth and what the club believes that he's worth. And it really comes down to term. And I'm one who has always said in these negotiations, term kills. But every player, you don't get to be a professional athlete at this level, make it to the National Hockey League without being supremely confident. And you got a situation where Brock Besser is sitting there and he's saying, I'm worth a 7 or 8 year deal. And by the way, you guys handed out these kind of deals to 3 players before me, to Quinn Hughes and to JT Miller and to Elias Pettersson. And I think, it somewhat was a slap in the face to the player, whether he's right or wrong, that the team only offered him, a term of, let's say it's 5 years, whatever it was. So that right off the hop things weren't going to be warm and fuzzy between the player and the agent and the team. And then afterwards, when the GM comes out and publicly and says, I didn't get offered basically a pail of pucks, to quote a former owner that I worked for, a pail of pucks for the player, that's something that's going to further drive a wedge between this player and the agent and the team. That being said, cooler heads can always prevail, and one must always be pragmatic. And I wouldn't say that it's a fait accompli that the guy's gone at the end of the season, but right now it's not looking good. Let's put it that way.
Alvin began last week by saying no steps back, and he didn't see himself on the rental market. You tell me, given the cost of rentals, was this team worth adding to?
Well, I mean, they're clearly not the team they were up front when they started. I think they're better defensively for sure than they were at the start of the season. And yes, they could stand to have used another forward, particularly a top six forward. The rental price was high. It always is high. Draft picks have their lowest value in the entire calendar on the day of the trade deadline. After that, the value of a draft pick shoots up. And then when you go to the draft and you want a second round pick for a player that's under contract, the other GM will say, I'm not giving you a second round pick. Yet on deadline day, they're throwing second round picks around like flowers. Could they have acquired somebody, with a rental with one of their picks? Yes, they could have. Might it have made a difference? Yeah, I think it might have. They're already in the playoffs, whether they know it or not. There's 18 or so games left in the season. Tonight's game against Calgary is most assuredly a playoff game. I mean, they have to win like as many games as possible going forward, and having more depth up front, that would have been incredibly helpful to them.
Now the flip side of the equation, Laurence, was no steps back, given where this team is, given the injury status of Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko. Is that penny wise and pound foolish?
It's pretty tough when you're basically in a playoff spot at the deadline. It's pretty tough to raise the white flag and say this isn't our year, even though there have been enough significant lightning bolts that have struck this team from the start of the season to today, whether that's the discord that existed in their dressing room, whether that's the significant injuries that have occurred, both to significant players throughout the roster, and whatever discord might exist between the players and the coach, because I think you've got a frustrated group, both on the ice and behind the bench. That being said, you're in a playoff race. It'd be different if they were 4 to 6 points out of a playoff spot going into the deadline or more, but they weren't. They had the 8th spot nailed down on the day of the deadline. If they were 1 point out of it. I can fully understand why they didn't have a sell-off. And as I said, that's not the nature of the way that Canucks have been run historically.
The Canucks are going to need another center sometime between now and July 3rd. That's when all the good centers are going to be available. Past July 3rd, I don't suspect there will be any good centers. With that in mind, either this past deadline or now at the draft, do the Canucks have to consider parting with one of their blue chippers, and they've really got two in Lekramacky and Wielander? How else do they get the next center? Because as we're seeing right now, there isn't a whole lot of top end on the Vancouver Canucks forward set. They're going to need to find some, but you got to pay to get. And I just don't even know how they do that without parting with some of their top end talent.
Well, they're going to have to. I mean, if that's what their goal is, you're not getting, if you identify that you need a second center, let's say, let's say the Elias Pettersson issue gets resolved and they need to replace what JT Miller brought, you're not getting that asset, particularly one that's going to be younger, on a more favorable contract, perhaps a contract that has term, unless you're giving up a significant asset. Whether that's Lekramacky or whether that's Wielander or whether it's anybody else, a first-round pick, whatever the case is, you're not getting, they don't fall off trees, as we've talked about many times. So, but I would add, from the time the trade deadline passes, people then take stock of their place in the cosmos, so to speak. And deals get done. They get done, in May, and they get done in June, and they get done at the draft. And there's lots of opportunity for them to improve their team between now and July 3rd, as you said.
The Wielander question. Do you have strong opinions on giving the college guy the burning year? Is it just a given in today's world now that you burn that year for the college player?
Unfortunately, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And I think it's a terrible thing for the player. I think it's detrimental on a number of fronts, and I've seen it. First of all, what you're doing, the statement for the player and the agent. Like, the problem is if an agent, let me back up again. You put a player in the league who doesn't deserve to be there. And, oftentimes they don't even play. I think Wielander will actually play, but they get to the NHL without the merit of actually earning the spot. They get it because of the contractual situation. That then, gets into the head of the player, or the player begins to think that he's a bona fide NHL player when he's not. And then when you go to send the guy to the minors, which is probably in his best interest at the beginning of next year, he thinks that you've screwed him over. And it's never a good thing for the player. But at the end of the day, that's the way this business is. And if you're an agent representing one of these players, if you're not, let's say you agree with the general manager, yeah, we're not going to burn the year. We're going to put him in, let him start in Abbotsford. That guy could get fired within the next 16 months or whatever the case is. So it's just the nature of the business. It's not something that anybody on the NHL team side likes. And at the end of the day, I don't really think it benefits the player at all, other than the fact that they get, a full year's worth of salary for playing a month in the NHL.
Yeah, and they get to their free agency a little bit quicker, obviously.
Yeah, but you know what? That may not help them at the end of the day, because their body of work might not be established. So it cuts both ways.
Yep.
But, as I said, that's the nature of the business.
Hey, Laurence, what's your sense on Tocchet's future here? You talked about frustration behind the bench, frustration on the ice. Boy, it seems like there's a lot of this common messages night after night about players not responding to this, players not doing this. What's your sense of Tocchet's future here?
My sense of Rick Tocchet's future is that it will be decided by him. Rick Tocchet's a good coach. And I think personally, as viewing from afar, I hold the players accountable for what hasn't occurred in terms of productivity on the ice. And, there's an old expression, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken manure. And not to say that their lineup is that bad, but you lose a player like JT Miller, you replace him with a guy who's closer to a third line center than a second line center. You have all this discord and stuff that we've read about in the dressing room. All that stuff impacts the players. It's got to be deeply frustrating. I think if Rick Tocchet were on the market, if he decided to walk away, he would, he could go back to television easily, but he could also be back behind the bench of another team very easily. Rick Tocchet's a very, very good coach. He's very well respected. And I look at, the one thing I look at in his eyes when I see him behind the bench, I see a guy who's getting fed up. And, I think at some point, he's a proud guy. And I watched your segment with John Shannon yesterday. He doesn't necessarily need the money. And yes, there are only 32 of these jobs, but sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And I think that's what's being weighed in Rick Tocchet's mind at this point.
Have you had a discussion with a coach before in this situation where, they're just not listening to me? Have you ever had to deal with an exasperated coach here? And what's that discussion like?
I think it's fair to say that towards the end of Alain Vigneault's tenure, that there was disconnect between him and the team. I think it bothered the players, quite honestly, more than it bothered him. I don't think too many things bothered him have bothered him in his life. But I didn't get they're not listening to me, and what am I going to do? I mean,
yeah.
I've had my share of, I've told many coaches who have complained about their players and their roster. I've said this to a number of them. If we give you a roster of 23 players and you love every single one of them, you'll be the first coach in the history of the National Hockey League to feel that way.
probably true.
Alain was so unbothered. Blake and I were there in that hotel in San Jose after the loss to the Sharks, where the Cab Sav Summit was on there.
He knew.
And with a bunch. He knew it. It's almost like a weight was lifted off his shoulders. I felt that night for AV.
Well, we all knew it was tough.
Yeah.
You know, and I say it again. You know, again, we're talking about someone who I have the most respect for. Is the best coach that I have ever worked with in my career. But every coach has a shelf life.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't care how good the coach is. There comes a point where you need to make a change because a change needs to be made. And in many cases, that has nothing to do with the acumen of the individual. It's just sometimes there needs to be a different procedure.
So let me.
There's a good comparison here because Alain Vigneault was always told, or was always assumed to be a defensive coach.
Yes, this is the question I was going to.
And so as the early years of the Canucks rolled by, he tried to downplay that and say, I'm not, but I need the right players. And then, of course, the players arrived and the Sedins blossomed, and he was an offensive coach all of a sudden leading the league. You think Rick Tocchet would say amongst the same sort of things that I just need the horses? I'm not a defensive coach, but I don't have the horses to play offensively right now.
I think that's 100% correct. And Alain Vigneault is a perfect example of that because in his time before, you know, when the West Coast Express was winding down and the team didn't have the depth that it had up front, you had to grind. When you're coaching a team like that, you have to grind it out. You're not getting into a run and gun shooting match with somebody because you'll lose 9 games out of 10. And, you know, it's like the Phoenix Coyotes under Dave Tippett, when I was with Phoenix, like when I was with Vancouver rather, we used to joke that their mentality was they're starting each game with 1 point. Like, we got 1 point. We just need to not give away that second point. And as such, they would play a defensive game to try and get it to overtime and then, you know, see what happens at that point. But yes, I believe that, you know, to quote the late, great Tommy McPhee, you got to dance with the one you brung. And when your team isn't, you know, an upper echelon, high-powered offensive unit, you need to play strong, smart defensive.
There was a reason Ray Cronin the Barbarian was the thing.
Yeah, well,
right?
But the 06-07 season, AV wins Jack Adams with a team that wins its division because it locks it down, and Louis is there to save the day when it wasn't the case. But let's fast forward 2 years, Laurence, and the famous Gatineau Summit where Gillis goes to Alain and, you know, not knowing him as an inherited coach, and basically says, can you change the way we coach things? I think we have to be a little bit more offensive. Granted, it rests on personnel and finding better offensive personnel and that top 2 center that Blake was talking about. But do you have to look to Tocchet going forward now and say, okay, we play such low event hockey, such non-threatening hockey that if we bring you better personnel, we have to change the way that we're going about things for more rush chances and more slot chances. And granted, some of these things Tocchet has already acknowledged need to be a part of the equation going forward.
Well, I would suggest that having Quinn Hughes back in the lineup will go a long way in terms of generating offense, particularly off the rush.
Fair enough, but this predates Hughes. Like, he was talking about this last summer that they got to do more on the rush, and sure enough, they're even worse on the rush this year.
Right. Well, I think, you know, again, you coach based on the composition of your lineup, and, you know, you've got some really good grinding forwards, you know, the Puce Suitors and the Kiefer Sherwoods and the like, and even Connor Garland. I mean, when you have dog on a bone players, you need to coach like a dog on a bone, or coach the team to play like a dog on a bone. Yes, as the roster improves, you know, you can then open things up. And by the way, Matt, there was more at that summit than just coaching the team offensively. There were a few other issues that had to be dealt with.
Well, pray tell.
Well, I just think, I think Mike did not Mike, you have to keep in mind, Mike represented the captain of the team before he took the job, and he was an agent, you know, living in Vancouver. And I don't think he liked the way Alain talked about his players in the media. And I think that was something that needed to change going forward, because Mike felt you're not going to get the best out of your players if they don't think you have their back. And I will have, and I think what was also said was, I will have your back, but I need that from you. I need you to change in that regard.
The Kessler comments predated that or
Well,
postdated
no,
that?
but
That was postdated, I think.
We have talked about the Kessler comments many, many times. He was asked day in, day out about Kessler shooting the puck every time he got over the blue line that 1 year off the 41-goal season. And like on day 23, he said, I think Ryan could better use his wingers, which was wholeheartedly
That was true.
and would have landed most professionally with just about every other personality in that room other than number 17. I never knew that. I will say this. I think Alain walked a very good line then about being honest with Canucks fans and media about his assessment of players from that point forward without getting on the wrong side of them, or at least so it seemed.
I think he was honest in his assessment with players in his office as well.
Yeah.
And, he held players accountable. And I have no doubt that, that comment made to Ryan Kessler came from Alain's heart and was right, and ironically, it's interesting. John Tortorella wasn't the biggest analytics guy when we had him. And
Shocking.
We showed him a heat map from Kessler's 41-goal season and showed where Ryan Kessler's goals the majority were scored. And no surprise, they were all scored. The majority were scored within 10 feet of the net, even less, 5 feet of the net. And when we showed that to Torts, his eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. And he said, can I have this? And he took the paper and he got up from his desk and ran into the dressing room to show it to Kessler because, at that time, Ryan was getting over the blue line and blasting a slap shot. And, the analytics show that, a slap shot from the blue line has something like a 0.2% chance of going in the net, absent traffic or,
Yeah, no, it was extraordinary how much he scored with that wrist shot from the top of the slot in the 41-goal season. I can understand why he fell in love with it to some degree, and I also can understand why he needed to be weaned off it. That's great intel, LG. Appreciate that. Do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. We'll let him get back to his post-holiday.
Yeah, send me a bottle of gin. I'd like to see it.
That's
Yes,
right.
we'll do
We'll
that.
send you a
We'll do
bottle
that.
of
All inclusive.
Resurrection Spirits.
Yes.
Thanks for this, Laurence. We'll catch up next week.
Okay, guys, have a good week. Thank you.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where if you have your tickets to the big game, make it a full experience. Stay downtown at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Harrison Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. I got to hand it to this guy. And, it takes a lot for me to hand it to this guy.
Yeah.
But 2 weeks in to the Safeway My NHL picks, and Blake's cooking here.
Yeah. Yeah, before long, I'm going to be eating for free.
It was a winning first week, pedestrian 3-2, but off on the right note. 4-1 this week.
Yeah, I went 4-1 with my
70% right
Safeway
now, baby.
NHL picks.
7-3 over 2 weeks.
Got the Canes to eke out a narrow win, but hey, they all count. 3-2 over the Bruins. Predicted that the Avalanche would stomp the Sharks, which they did. Mm-hmm. How the Chicago Blackhawks beat Utah,
right?
We will never know, but that was my...
And if that's the only one you lose...
That's the only one I lose, and it was very clearly not predictable. Finished off the week just fine as well. The Canuck win over the Wild.
And you had Dallas.
And then the stub of the toe versus Dallas, which I thought would happen as well. So all going according to plan. And because of this, so I've got 7 right in my 2 weeks. And I just realized I don't have to wait long for the dividends to pay out here. Because once I get to, there's thresholds that as soon as you get to that number of correct picks, bonuses kick in. So after 10 correct picks, so I'm assuming with the picks that I'll announce tomorrow, if I get to 10, the next time I spend $5 at Safeway, I'll get 500 Scene Plus points. Boom, in the account. Like it's
fantastic.
It's like, why wouldn't you do this?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll tell you
fun.
We'll tell you my picks tomorrow. But all you have to do is download the Safeway app, and you can play along as well.
This segment brought to you by Ben Moss, proudly Canadian-owned, operated for more than 100 years. 5 locations in British Columbia, Abbotsford, Victoria, Chilliwack, Willowbrook, and Langley. Coquitlam Center, committed to customer satisfaction. Check out the large selection Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. They got mine diamonds, payment plans to suit your needs. For more information, check out benmoss.com, because love is timeless. Whitecaps in Monterey tonight for the second leg of their CONCACAF Champions Cup against the Mexican side. That's a 5:30 kickoff, so you can start that game. And then you got the Canucks at 6. Love this time of year. It's getting so busy. Canadian men's national team named today for the, hopefully 2 matches later this month, right? They got Mexico.
No, it's 2 regardless. It's their third place game as well, so they're playing 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is, help me out, Nations
League. Which has sort of taken over from Gold Cup. Like, Gold Cup still exists, but that's sort of your B team now, is what it seems to be happening. This is the big North American.
So many changes. Yeah. Like, not only changes in structure, but changes in names as well, as we've discussed. CONCACAF Champions League has become Champions Cup. Anyways, Ali Ahmed of the Caps named to that team. 4 ex-Caps there as well. Alfonso Davies, Richie Larea, Derek Cornelius, Max Crepeau. And MLS put out a graphic yesterday. The Whitecaps lead the league in touches in the opponent's box, which sounds sturdy, but it's really, it's stunning because the Caps have never sort of been known as that high-scoring team with tons of possession down in the opponent's box, but that is what is happening here.
Well, today's game is going to be very interesting because I don't know that I've seen it, the Whitecaps dominated team the way they dominated Monterey. And again, it was a 1-1 game. Yes, I realize that. But honestly, Monterey made it across the halfway line in possession maybe 3 times the entire match. Like, it was only played in their half. So was that just because they were playing their B squad and they were parking the bus just hoping to eke out the 1-1 draw that they got and will assault the Whitecaps in this one? We're going to find out. But it'll be very interesting. On the Canadian men's national team, by the way, funny thing happened on the conference call as Jesse Marsh laid out the squad today. Jonathan David scored during the call in Champions League, and so the comms director jumped into the Zoom call. Was like, by the way, guys, Jonathan David just scored, and Marsh gave a fist bump. So he's in form as they get set to play these games.
Are we ready for David and David up top with Jonathan and Promise David, new Canadian, new naturalized?
Promise David was on the Whitecaps radar for his last transfer. It's too bad that didn't come to pass.
So some Canadian debuts there as well. That game is in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium against Mexico. If they win, they are likely through to the final against the United States. And how about beating the United States in soccer as well as hockey for a trophy?
Imagine? Again, walk before we run. We got to beat Mexico first. But can you imagine if we swept them? Right. Oh,
hockey is one thing, but soccer?
Yeah.
We know that there are tremendous BC Lions fans on Vancouver Island, but owner Amar Doman from Victoria, he knows it ran even deeper. How about this from the Leos? They announce a preseason game in Langford at Starlight against the Calgary Stampeders on May 19th. The game sold out in 12 minutes yesterday.
Great.
Preseason CFL football. So well done there to the football fans on Vancouver Island. Lions also announced a signing today, a pedigreed defensive back, Johnny Dixon. He played at South Carolina and Penn State, 2 pretty big programs. And congrats to Coquitlam's Javon Holland, who was seeking a $45 million deal from his Miami Dolphins. They said, too rich, don't feel like we want to pay that. Early hours of free agency, didn't look like that money was out there for him. New York Giants step up a 3-year deal. It's going to guarantee him $30 million,
Really?
$50 million. If you don't know the story here, Javon is super proud of his Canadian roots. He participates in all the NFL Canada promotional opportunities and social media. He was raised by his father, John Holland, in Coquitlam, who was a former CFL player and coach. Not to be confused with Johnny Holland, who later coached the BC Lions, terrific linebacker once upon a time for the Green Bay Packers. Anyways, the family lived here in Coquitlam. Javon then moved to the Bay Area, had a terrific collegiate career at Oregon, was a second-round pick in the Miami Dolphins, and is having a splendid NFL career. So good luck to him in the Big Apple. Seahawks signed wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling, ex of Green Bay, KC, Buffalo, New Orleans. Deep threat, big guy, has some drop issues, and they were awarded 3 compensatory picks yesterday from the NFL in this draft. It's a complicated formula dealing with free agent losses and signings. Anyways, the Hawks got 3 picks. They're up to 10 picks in the draft.
Where do those picks drop in?
It was, I'm going to have to look at it again, Blake. I want to say one of them was better than people suspected, but usually they start at the end of the 3rd round.
Okay.
The Hawks did not get a 3rd rounder, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, they may have. So they start at the
4th.
Okay.
4th, 5th, and 6th.
There you go. 5 in the first 92 selections now for Seattle. A first, number 18. The 2 seconds, of course, one coming from Pittsburgh from the DK Metcalf.
But number 137.
50 and 52, actually, in the second round. And then they have 2 third-round picks as well.
Number 137 gets you something.
Oh, yeah. It's the NFL draft, man.
Everything gets you something. Yeah, totally.
7th rounders in the NFL mean a lot more than 7th rounders in the NHL draft. And second rounders mean way more than they do in the NBA draft. Oh, poor Tiger Woods. If you had designs on seeing Tiger in competitive play in major season 2025, they went out the window yesterday. Tiger reporting that as he ramped up his training and practice at home, he felt a sharp pain in his left Achilles. Sure enough, deemed ruptured. He had the tendon repaired. He says he's back home now and plans to focus on his recovery. But Tiger Woods will not be playing competitive golf in 2025, which is really too bad.
And in the end...
And we may next see him on the Champions Tour, folks, because when he turns 50, then he's got his opportunity to play on the Champions Tour. And usually guys who just turned 50 do pretty well on that tour. There's not a lot of rough, so...
He's 50 at Christmas, by the way, so
Yeah.
it's a fait accompli. And also what seemed like a fait accompli, him breaking Jack Nicklaus's record, ends up being a comfortable pad for Jack Nicklaus in the end.
Well,
if you held out any hope for a 48-year-old win like Jack had at the Masters.
46. Yeah.
Was he 46? Pardon.
46.
Easy enough. A 3 major, we can put this to bed now. There's no miracle. Like, if he had a miracle, still would only bring him to 16.
And I know this is unpopular, but that's why I still deem Jack Nicklaus the greatest golfer of all time. He's got a full Hall of Fame career worth of majors more than Tiger Woods, not to mention many more close finishes, top 2s, top 3s, top 5s, top 10s. The Blue Jays and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are $50 million apart, or about $3.5 million per season on a 15-year deal after details of the Jays' best offer emerge and following Vladdy talking about what he was asking for. That's a bridgeable gap. So all may not be lost if you're a Blue Jays fan sweating the imminent departure of Vladdy Guerrero. You should be able to get together and bridge that gap if his agent is willing to listen and if they are willing to sign something in season, which Vladdy had previously said, look, he's not closing the door, but he didn't want to distract the season with talk of contract negotiations. We'll see where this goes. And Blake, we have another matter with Fanatics apparel in Major League Baseball. You may remember last year the pants were ripping as players were sliding in complexes in Arizona and Florida.
See-through pants.
Yeah, weren't thick enough. Well, Fanatics unveiled a new line of baseball caps,
which by its very description
for this season
sounds like a bad idea. The Overlap series.
Yes. So what happens here is that the front center of the cap, they superimpose the team logo with the team name scripted in the background. So the Jays bird logo is front, center, and prominent, whereas you have Blue Jays written in the background with the middle letters
And it's as chaotic and busy as that sounds.
When I first saw it, I went, wow, that's way too busy a hat for me. The reason that I love Major League Baseball hats, it's because the simple, clean
Pirates.
logos.
I know I love you think this is Price. It's Pirates.
Yeah. So they were a little busy for me, but that's just a matter of taste. Then came the revelations. We have a problem in the American League West. The oversized T, the Rangers logo, is blocking out the X in Texas. It forms the word tetas. Tetas is Spanish for boobs.
And if you don't speak Spanish, you probably could have guessed that. It sounds like what the Spanish word for
Tetas.
teats would sound like.
Now, the Mariners is otherwise innocuous. The Mariners become Mazers. You may know that the Athletics no longer ascribe a hometown. They are not Oakland. They are not Sacramento. They are not Las Vegas just yet. So the A's, with Athletics in the back, becomes Atalastics. The Angels become Anahels. And the Astros become Asshos.
Sorry, what was the Angels one? Spell it out.
Anahels.
Spell it out, please.
A-N-A-E-L-S.
Oh, so close.
I know.
So close.
One vowel away.
Thank God for the E. The E is doing so much work there
The E is doing all the heavy lifting.
to save us from
Anahels. Asshos. Houston is the Asshos.
Oh, my God.
Atalastics. They all have sort of a derriere theme going on there.
And numerous people would have looked at that and go, yep, print it. Like, how?
Yes,
like
how?
That's your job.
You're telling me there's not a single Spanish speaker in the design department there at Fanatics?
But it's not
who
even
looks at Tetas and says, guys, we can't go forward with these.
So that's the top of the podium. Secondly, when you look at Anaehos, the first thing you see is anal. It's the first thing you see. What are you doing here?
Like Asshos.
That one's just kind of fun. I don't mind that one.
Did these Major League teams not get a heads up? Did anybody involved in Major League Baseball, where there are a ton of Spanish speakers, not to mention people who might have some sort of guardianship of these individual brands, go, no, we don't actually want to be Anahels. We don't want to be Assos.
Given Houston's reputation the last handful of years, that's just a descriptive word. Just an adjective.
Jose Altuve, he's playing left field this year for the Assos. Okay. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Tuesday. Have the Canucks shown Brock Besser appropriate respect? Yes or no? What did the people say?
They said no.
Correct. Percentage?
64.
56. Rami, sadly, this organization has shown a pattern of unnecessarily public disrespect from Boudreau to now Besser. No need for the negative comments on trade value, regardless of how they feel about the player. Canuck Girl, yes, he hasn't put up the numbers. End of story. 140 goal season is just not good enough. And Keys, Alvin has been an asshole, but on the other hand, Besser has been complete dog shit, so it's 50-50.
Those sound related.
I would not have gone down that road. It was a little crude, but we've just come off a bit about.
We've got some baseball hats for both of those metaphors.
Errors and omissions. John Shannon misspoke. He said PD looked good Saturday. It was the Friday game against the Minnesota Wild. Is there anything that came across your radar, anything to self-report?
No, other than I just said my hat was a Pirates hat. It's a Puma hat.
It is a Puma hat.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I was going to correct you. It's not the correct font on the P.
No.
Plus, it would be yellow.
People have thought it's a Pirates hat, by the way.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the show. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, We're live on many of those platforms starting at noon Pacific. And of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about and keep it local.